Before we get started, we wanted to thank Matchstick Golf for being our first title sponsor. Matchstick is a custom designer of ball markers based in Portland, Oregon, that was born out of its founder getting sick and tired of trying to find cool ball markers that weren't huge, heavy poker chips that didn't cost $300 on eBay. Matchstick's markers include the one-eyed alligator from Happy Gilmore, a stack of cash that will have you putting for dough. Right now, Matchstick is offering 15% off your first order at matchstickgolf.com with the code MuniciPals. So head on over to matchstickgolf.com, enter MuniciPals at checkout, tell them Big C in Ashton sent you.
How hard did you push it? Till I black out? Yes. Numerous times, yes.
Welcome back, MuniciPals. This is part 2 with Matty Brown, ex-mayor of Gerhardt, owner of Manzanita. If you guys didn't already know from the first podcast, just one of the best guys in golf. So stay tuned, listen up. This is a great one.
Yeah, for those of you that have had the opportunity to try the new punch bowl at Gerhardt Golf Links, have you putted around on that one yet?
You know what? This is going to be such a crazy take. I haven't been able to play Gerhardt yet.
Oh, well, get down here. We'll play.
Absolutely.
They're doing an incredible job. So shout out to Jason Bangill, director of golf. He is just really doing an awesome job. Tim Boyle, the new owner, has been just really restoring it back to the original link style. And their superintendent, Forrest Goodling, who was superintendent at Portland Golf Club for many years, he's just really got the course in great shape. And they built a super cool punch bowl with a bar attached to it called the Sand Bar. So there's the Sand Bar, and then the punch bowl's called the Clam Bed. They have their own logo for it. They sell cool merchandise with it, dude. It's so cool. And it's just a really good vibe. They've always got like a fire pit going out there, and really cool bar and stuff. And a lot of the locals now, we just kind of walk over there and get a drink and putt around. But the inspiration for a lot of these punch bowls, at St. Andrews, they have the Himalayas, which is just a really cool putting course. And they have a ladies putting club that belongs there. And, one idea we had for Manzanita is we wanted to start maybe a putting league where folks could go out, maybe after 5 o'clock and, for $5, just go around and walk the course and then putt on all the greens and keep scoring. Something like that's a great way to get people in that might be intimidated by playing, a full 9 or full 18 holes, but they want to go and putt around. So anything we can do like that to get a club in people's hands and out there putting around, I think is going to be really beneficial.
You know what? We'll have to bring Muni Madness to the coast this year, because we had a great time doing it out at Wildwood this year. I was doing it every Tuesday at Wildwood through the end of summer, and we had incredible turnouts at every event that we had out there. And I think Manzanita would be an absolute gem to be able to do a Muni Madness. So come summer, we'll have to come out there and we'll do, a weekend where we do a Muni Madness. We'll go play Gerhardt, and then we'll do 18, 9 at Manzanita, 9 at Highlands.
That'd be awesome. We got to definitely put that on the calendar.
Yeah. So we'll have to get my cohorts out here from the Bay Area. We'll hit up some of our favorite guys in golf, and we'll get something planned out there for the summer, because I think Manzanita would be epic to be able to do one of those out there. So
yeah, that'd be killer. I watched the videos of you guys at Wildwood, and man, it looked like a really good time.
It was great, and I can't take any credit for it because I learned how to run one by going down to Coos and playing with all the caddies from Bandon out at Coos Bay.
Nice.
So I can't take credit for it at all. Andre was one of the best hosts ever. He had me and Ashton out there, and we played 36 holes with him and his brother Paulo. And then that night they had about 20 or 30 banding caddies out there for a Muni Madness. And it was one of the best times I've ever had in a golf course where I didn't actually feel like I was playing golf.
That's
and
awesome.
When I felt that, the minute I came out to Portland, I brought it up to Ryan, and we got it going out there. And it's something we're going to continue through all of spring and summer coming up. And I absolutely am going to have to bring all the guys out to Manzanita, and we'll throw it out there. But what I want to hear is, you were talking a little bit before we started recording about some modifications that you were going to be doing out at Manzanita. So tell us what you're thinking of changing out there, and what your inspiration for doing some workout on the course.
Yeah, for sure. So, when we took over, our goal was to kind of just keep reinvesting every winter in small projects to improve the golf course. And so, the first 3 years that we've had it, it's been a lot of irrigation stuff, expanding the pond, irrigation pond, changing sprinkler heads. There's a lot of old heads there. We had a old manual system. And so we've been slowly kind of doing that. This winter, we're doing a bunch of stuff with fairways, where we basically are reseeding all the fairways with the Bandon Dunes fescue mix seed, to kind of just create a little better coverage, more drought resistant grass and things like that. So those are kind of some of the things we're working on. But kind of from an architectural standpoint, I just started really getting into like square greens, just starting to see some pictures, and people have been sending me these photos and stuff. And I'm like, geez, this is so cool. Like, why did we go away from square greens and stuff? And I don't know, it just looked really cool. And I saw this picture of this course. I think it's in Michigan, or no, I think it's in Illinois. And I think it's like an old Seth Rayner course or something. And they showed like what the course looked like now, and then what the modifications were going to be. And they like changed the first green. It was, just a kind of a round green, and it was square. And then the bunkers became a little more square. And then like there was this dope like green collar that like squared off into the next tee box. And I was like, oh my God, like we could do some of that fun stuff just by changing some mowing patterns. Right. So I got with our superintendent, Taylor, a few months ago. I was like, hey, dude, check out these pictures. Like, these are so cool. He's like, oh my God, like I've never seen stuff like that before. I'm like, yeah, why don't we just this winter, after we get our fairway project done, like let's just start screwing around with some mow lines and just see what it looks like. If it doesn't look cool, we can change it back. It's just grass. It'll grow back. But like we were talking about, there's a few areas where there's already kind of a little bit of squareness on like a couple edges, and we might just refine that a little bit. And there's some greens where we might square the front or square the back. And then we started looking at water conservation as well in our fairways. And with, bringing the fescue grass on, we also realized that, some of our irrigation stuff was like watering like the neighbor's yard, and like out in this rough area where like you don't even, there's nothing there, and like we had some sprinkler heads that were like watering the pond, like the water was going back into the pond. We're like, wait, hold on a second. Like, why don't we just start reshaping some of the fairways too? And maybe we can alter some of those mow lines and square some of those off as well. So you just kind of get like a different look that a lot of places around in Oregon anyways, you don't have. So, we're going to start kind of experimenting with those mow lines. I'll take some before and after pictures and send to you guys. It always, when you change mow lines, it always takes a little bit for the grass to recover, because you're basically scalping some areas. So it kind of yellows out a little bit. But then once you start fertilizing, and then this spring, it should start to really pop. So we'll definitely do some drone stuff and see what it looks like. But Chris, I was showing you some of those pictures from my friend Jeff Marsh, who sent some pictures back from the municipal course back east. And you and I were just blown away by some of those photos. Like I've never seen anything like it. Like, it just looks so cool.
It's unlike anything, especially us on the West Coast, have ever seen. It's just our architecture, unfortunately, isn't as old as what you're going to get on the East Coast. And a lot of those guys didn't really make it over this way. So, like we were talking about with Rayner and McDonald and a lot of those guys, that was kind of the architectural stuff that they brought overseas with them when they came over to America and started building a lot of these courses from the East Coast to the Midwest. And we were blessed with a lot of great architects on the West Coast, but they kind of, with some of the land and some of the different planes that they had to build, we get a lot more fingery greens, a lot more fingery bunkers, things that you don't get to see on the East Coast. So, but those kind of things we want to see out here. And I think getting the chance, like you as a golf course owner, getting the chance to play with that in the winter and kind of see what happens is pretty cool, because I can't wait to get back out to Manzanita in the spring, summertime, and actually get to play some of those squared out fairways and greens.
Yeah, we'll see how they turn out. We'll I've got a couple in mind where I think it would look really, really cool. So we'll probably start with those and then kind of see where we go. But I wanted to tell you too that we started kind of doing some of that at the Highlands too. And we had, the first thing we did is we started squaring some of our tee boxes, which we did at Manzanita when we took over too. So, we had kind of round tee boxes or oval tee boxes. And, so we squared off all the Manzanita tee boxes, which just kind of has a cool look to it. Little different look. And then we started doing that at Highlands, and we thought, let's mess around with squares and circles. So there's a few greens that are ovals, but we wanted to make them perfect circles, like drawing a perfect circle, which you don't really see much of that either. So our fourth green at Manzanita, at Highlands, we started messing around with a perfect circle. So that green is now a perfect circle. And we squared off some of the tee boxes, but then we have a few secret tee boxes that we made perfect circles as well. So we tried to get away from the natural oval type weird thing, and okay, let's do a couple squares and a couple circles. And then one of our greens, number 8, we started messing around with square edges. So the front's going to be square and the back's going to be square, and the middle will be kind of curved. So we're just, we just kind of want to experiment with that this winter and just see what it looks like. So you might see some square greens at Highlands too coming up pretty soon.
So I can't remember what the course name was, but Andy Johnson from Fried Egg actually posted about this. And there was an architect in the 80s that when CAD first came along, he started designing courses based off their topography and using CAD. And CAD was such a rough program back then that you could only make things in geometric shapes. So there's a course built I'm pretty sure it's in the South. I think it's in Florida. And all the entire course is built geometrically. So when you look at any of the mounds that are in the fairways or the bunkers or the greens, they're perfect geometric shapes. Cool. So there's triangle mounds in the fairways, and there's triangle to octagon shaped bunkers, and the greens are all either diamond, perfect circles, or squares. Because with CAD, you couldn't, back in the 80s, you couldn't do anything. And he actually designed the entire course from afar and never saw the property other than the topography maps and using CAD. So the entire thing was designed without even having somebody on property to actually design the course.
Unbelievable.
And so that's a lot of true golf course architect nerds probably think it's the most appalling thing in the entire world, because it's not exactly what it is. And I'm pretty sure one of the courses built in France that way as well. But those are things that intrigue me because I don't see that often, and I don't get to play places like that. So anything that can bring light to a golf course that makes it different than the next, I think warrants the change, because those changes are what's going to bring people to you. And just like we were talking about with Gerhardt, when the new owner, purchased the course and really renovated it to be more of a link style than a parkland course of what it was. I mean, you grew up out there, and I only have been able to see it based in pictures, and the amount of foliage and trees that they've eliminated and kind of opened up the course to has completely changed the landscape out there. And I think it's what draws more people out to Gerhardt.
No, absolutely. And, it's, and you see that a lot now. You just see like the original designs of all these courses that were built in the turn of the century. And it's so cool what architects can do now, where they'll go back and they'll see these historic photos and they'll somehow get the scales correct on those photos. Like, oh, that mound there that used to be there, that's 5 feet tall or whatever it is. And they'll get the slopes and the contours back to where they were. Like, I don't even know how they do that. But I just, as soon as I started delving into more of those geometrical shapes, you realize there's so many classic courses that have a few holes like that. And I'm like, wow, if we could maybe do a couple greens like that and just see what it looks like. To all the listeners, the course that you guys got to check out, it's James Island Municipal Golf Course in Charleston. If you guys also follow Jeff K. Marsh on Instagram, if you have a chance. He's good buddies from the Seattle area, and he's been just killing it in the photography game over the last couple years. And he finds these little hidden gems as well. And this latest one that he found, I can't wait to talk to him about it. I want to see his whole camera roll. I mean, this place looks so cool. And he's really into golf course architecture and a really smart guy. So, there's so much stuff that, growing up on the West Coast, it's like a different world, some of this stuff.
And I think that's why we all praise people like Mike Kaiser, because he is kind of bringing things to life that didn't exist. I don't think anyone would have bought the property in Bandon and did what he did down there. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And then, what he's done, throughout the landscape, and him being such an architect nerd and kind of hitting up Tom Doak and saying, hey, that famous course that no longer really exists, the Lido? Well, let's rebuild that in Nebraska. And I mean, who is going to buy property in Nebraska and rebuild one of the most lost famous architectural designs in golf history, except for Mike Kaiser? Sure. And it's so great to have guys like that. And, architects like Doak and Hance and Crenshaw. And I mean, the fat, McClay kid. I mean, there's names for days right now that we're seeing a resurgence of creative designs and creative redesigns. Like you're talking about, these guys are going out, finding these old plans and bringing these courses back to what they originally were and they were meant to be played as. And I appreciate the hell out of it because, that's the one thing I think we'll talk about Sharp. It's some of these courses over time kind of just get massacred. And it could be maintenance that makes it more, it makes it easier for them to maintain by shrinking the greens and changing these different angles and things like that. And I know you could probably speak on it more than myself as a golf course owner and what it takes to maintain or make these changes. But it's great to see a lot of these courses kind of getting back into what they originally were.
Absolutely. And it's cool to see people really care about them. I think it's easy to for things to get stale. I think you've probably seen that a lot too in the private club sector, a lot of private clubs that just become stale, and people don't realize that less is more. We talk about that a lot with food and beverage and stuff. It's we'd rather have somebody grilling some hot dogs and having a chest full of beer, then I don't need a fancy restaurant. I just want some good pub food real quick, and we're out the door. And I think some of these, I think America's version of golf sometimes has gotten to the point where it's like, oh no, you need to have a, full dining menu and, fine dining every night and this and that. And it's like, no, dude, you need clam chowder and a good hot dog and your buddies, and like go out there and have a good time. And so it's really been fun over the last 4 or 5 years, especially, there's a lot of bad stuff about social media, but there's also like a really cool golf vibe on social media right now of people that are doing some cool things, like you guys and the Muni kids and Ryan, and especially in the Northwest. I mean, we've got Mackenzie golf bag guys, the Jones guys, the Seamus guys. I mean, who am I leaving out here? I mean, we've got so many.
We got Matchstick Golf out here.
Yeah, the Matchstick guys.
I mean, it's incredible
guys.
The amount
guys
of stuff.
Are doing stuff. Yeah.
And we got BB&F just came back into Oregon.
Oh, they did? They moved back?
Yeah, so he's down in Roseburg now.
Shoot. Wow. Yeah, Roseburg, that new course down there, I haven't had a chance to play down there.
Bar Run is good. You got to get down there and play it. Yeah, I've really, really enjoyed it. I think our guy has definitely put in some work on that track.
Well, yeah, Hickson and his wife Amy are super, super cool people, and I'm so happy for those guys. And when I go down to Bandon, I really enjoy playing Bandon Crossings. A lot of my best friend PK, he's a caddy at Bandon, and he traveled with me to St. Andrews, and then we caddied together at Augusta for a year. And hanging out with him down there, last time a couple of weeks ago, we went and played Crossings, which is just such a fun. It's so nice to be able to take a cart sometimes when you're down at Bandon for 3 days. And all the caddies play there now too, and so you get some great caddy games out there, and they're all great guys. And then have some beers at the arcade later, and hit the punch bowl after that, man. So lots of good stuff going on.
Yeah, I mean, in Wine Valley is an incredible design by him as well. If anybody is in Eastern Washington can play Wine Valley, it's incredible. So you just slipped something in there that caught me off guard a little bit. So you caddied at Augusta for a year. Yep.
So
how
my
was
best
that
friend,
experience?
It was awesome. It's I don't know, folks that being from the West Coast and kind of my first time in the South and everything, just the people that you meet down there are incredible. And so basically my best friend and I kind of went on a golf odyssey for a little while, and we went over to St. Andrews and then got back and went to Augusta and caddied there for a season, and just packed up the car and just drove there, and just had an incredible experience out on the golf course every day. I mean, you caddy every day there. There are no days off. You're basically there we got to take a little break during Christmas, but the coolest part was the experiences of all the old school caddies that have been there for generations. Like they grew up there. Sometimes their dad they caddied out there, and they have so many cool stories to share about caddying for Sevy and Jack and Arnie and everybody. And one of the coolest experiences was when you get there, you go through all the orientation stuff, and there's some greens training. Like you have to learn how to read the greens there, right? And so we got really lucky to go out there with an old caddy named Johnny Frank. And Johnny Frank was one of the guys that, you remember when David Duvall like almost won the Masters like 3 or 4 years in a row back in the 90s? Well, him and his caddy would take Johnny Frank out in his practice rounds. And Johnny Frank could, he was getting up there in age and he couldn't walk really well. So he would, like on hole number 8, for instance, you walk up to that green, but you could walk to the right where the 9th tee is. And so he dropped the player's bag, hand him the putter, and he'd be like 50 yards away from the green. And he would tell his player, that's a cup to the left. And literally, like, that was the perfect read from 50 yards out. Like, that's how well he knew those greens. And then he'd and wait on the first tee because he didn't want to walk all the way up there and go back. And
what a legend.
Dude, the guy was so legendary. Everybody was so cool there. We met so many great friends and friends that we're still in contact with now. And I got to go back to Augusta to the Masters a few years ago, which was the first time I was back there since I'd caddied there. And a bunch of the old caddies were still around. So my friend took me back to they have a brand new caddy building now. Like, it's all state of the art. I mean, they've got the whole new driving range and new caddy house. And like, when the caddy house was there before, it was just like this brick building. There was a guy flipping hamburgers in the back. And there were some lockers, and it was nothing. I mean, there's a little TV in the back, and now it's a really cool building. And in fact, a lot of the Masters players want to hang out there. Like, they'd rather hang out with their caddies and stuff in the caddy house than, go hang out at the range or whatever. So we roll in there, and there's a bunch of the caddies that we had caddied with, several years ago. And this was 2002, 2003. So this was the year that Mike Weir won.
Yep.
So I hadn't seen these guys forever, and I was like, everything's the same. I mean, everyone was so cool and stuff. And we're hanging out in the caddy house, and like Dustin Johnson rolls in there with this caddy, and they're just chilling, watching TV with the guys. And it's a pretty cool vibe for sure.
So yeah, I don't think a lot of people know. So Augusta, for the longest time, and I think it ended late 80s maybe, you used to have, when you came out and played the Masters, you used to have to actually take a Augusta caddy. So
Yep.
It was one of the only tournaments on tour that you actually could not bring your own caddy. You actually had to take a caddy from the caddy house.
Exactly. And so it was kind of cool. There was still a bunch of caddies there that were there when they had to take those caddies. And so, man, we heard some great stories, especially about like Seve. Seve was obviously the inspiration for King Seve at Manzanita. But Seve, like, some of the stories we told were just out of this world. I mean, the way that he thought about golf, the way that he would hit shots, the way that his grandiose persona, like, he thought he was the greatest thing ever. And for a long time he was. And so some of the caddies like telling us those stories, and then, they had a lot of those guys like have never been to the West Coast. So a lot of them didn't even know, where Oregon was. I remember one of our first conversations with some buddies, and they were like, Oregon, like, where's that? Is that like by Ohio or something? And I'm like, well, close. It's by kind of by California, and it's a little further west. And they're like, oh man, we got to get out there. I was like, yeah, you guys would love it out here. And we ended up, one of our good friends, Jason, he came out to Oregon. We brought him out, and he loved it so much he ended up caddying at Bandon Dunes for a season when we worked down there. And he loved it so much. I mean, he still kind of wants to move out here one day. I mean, he just loves it there too. But now we love going to visit him there. He grew up in Augusta, so we're hanging out. So he was one of the first guys we met, and he just showed us all around town. Like, hey, this is the local watering hole. This is where we hang out. We used to hang out at this bar called Somewhere in Augusta, which was really fun. And then there was a dance club there, like a couple blocks from our apartment, called Coconuts. And during Masters Week, Coconuts was just nuts, man. I mean, it was crazy. And then all the players would eat at T-Bone's Steakhouse. So we'd go to T-Bone's, and all the Masters players would be there hanging out. Just a really cool town. It's like it's kind of a small town vibe, actually, for being a pretty big city.
That's just incredible. That's the funny story with that. I think when people visit Oregon, I think there's a lot of people that don't know how good the state of Oregon is, because I actually, speaking of Tron and NLU and those guys, I was actually joking with him, and they have a house. The NLU guys have a house at Sweetens Cove, And I was asking them if they were going to have a West Coast house because I saw the houses being built on the Highlands.
Yeah.
And I joked with Tron, and I was like, hey, have you guys thought about putting an NLU house out here in Manzanita or Highlands? And he laughed because he's like, actually, yes, we've been looking through ads and looking at real estate and stuff out there because they're in the same boat. They came out, they visited you, they played Astoria and Gerhardt, the whole coast, and I think they absolutely fell in love with Oregon as well. And it's one of those places where if you like California and you like Northern California specifically and you like the coastal side of it, Oregon has a beat. I was born and raised in the Bay Area, and the coastal side of I was born and raised in the Bay Area, and the coastal side of Oregon blows it out of the water. Absolutely blows it out of the water. And
California is beautiful. I mean, I love Northern California. I mean, it's beautiful. Yeah, so that says a lot.
Yeah, and I mean, outside of Monterey, Monterey's its own pocket. We're not putting that on any scale, but it's also out of the market for 90% of humans on Earth. I mean, it's absurd how expensive it is to live in Monterey. But I mean, Humboldt County all the way down, to Bodega Bay and in the peninsula, I'll take, your area any day of the week. And I feel it's less crowded. It's not known as well yet. And it's just spectacular, scenery. And from Tillamook all the way up to Astoria is just incredible.
Well, I think one of the things that, playing Oregon golf courses a lot, that we underappreciate is how good a condition the courses are actually in. Now, I know that, some areas get really wet in the wintertime, and there's nothing we can do about that with all the rain. But, the first time that I went over or played golf like down south and went to Augusta and stuff, and we started playing a lot of courses around, I was like, man, like we are really lucky to have the greens that we have, that Poana and Bentgrass, and they got a lot of stuff to deal with down there, a lot of overseeding and things like that. And so I had worked at Pumpkin Ridge for a number of years, and, back then they had Bentgrass fairways, there's, Pumpkin Ridge was, for a long time, and, I think they're doing a good job now as well, but, it was a pretty well-maintained course for our area. It was kind of the first like really high-end daily fee type course. And I just remember after spending a lot of time there and then playing some other courses, I was like, gosh, we really have nicely maintained courses. Our private courses are always nicely maintained, but then our just public muni courses are really nice. Eastmoreland, I mean, Jesus.
It's incredible.
Portland courses are so great, the municipal courses, and then the courses on the coast. Gerhardt's always been known for having pretty good greens. Astoria's always had really, really good greens. And so growing up on those, like I really like kind of took that for granted. Well conditioned those courses were.
Yeah, coming from the Bay Area up to Portland, that's something that I kind of talk with Ashton about. So Ashton was born and raised in Atlanta, and the public golf scene in Atlanta is non-existent. They just do not have public golf out there. And that was something we actually talked with Tron about as well, because him and Ashton actually went to the same high school, which is kind of, yeah, it just so happened they went to the same high school, and it's crazy that happened. But they talked, for a good while when we had them on the first episode, and they've tried to reinvigorate it. Like the Bobby Jones course out there, they've put a lot of money into, but there really isn't any public golf scene out there. And then, like you were talking about, the private golf scene, it's heavily overseeded. They paint their greens in the winter to keep them from going dormant. There's just a lot of things that have to go on out there where we take it for granted out here. California, unfortunately, is always in a drought. So that's their biggest fight in California, is finding alternative ways. And that's why a lot of courses use potable water out in California. And I hate to say it, you go to some of these courses in the summertime and it literally smells like poop on the golf courses. It's horrible. Cause I mean, that's just what they have to deal with. And we're blessed having the amount of rain that we get in Oregon, because it allows you guys to kind of play with different aspects of agronomy to kind of dial in what you guys want to do on your courses. So
yeah, for sure. That's the thing too. Like, what we noticed like last year was actually less rainfall probably than I've ever remembered. We saw parts of the golf course that have never dried out before. And so we're like, oh my gosh, like I hope it rains this winter. We were really looking forward to some rain this fall, and thank God we got it. And it allowed us to now, okay, we wanted to kind of reseed the fairways with a different type of grass. Let's get that established. And it has gotten established, which is really cool. Same with Highlands. We've been able to, there's a few areas that you didn't realize the coverage wasn't really good until we had a drought type conditions. You're like, oh my gosh. And then we're able to like get some seed growth during this, this fall time right now where the temperatures are still warm enough to grow grass. And now you've got the water to do it as well. And so, as bad as some courses can get in, December and January with in the valley, some of them can get underwater, but then, come springtime, they're in great shape.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, so wintertime, like we were talking about, there are certain courses that get a little drowned out here, but for the most part, because of us being able to heavily sand certain times of the year, and most of the public courses, because they were built in the 30s, 40s, or 50s with the irrigation and things that they had, we have a lot of turtleback greens in the Pacific Northwest that allow us to kind of withstand the water amount that we get throughout the winter and the fall. And so we're allowed, with the amount of rain, we can still go out and play year round out here, which I think a lot of people don't know about the Pacific Northwest. They think we get into wintertime and we're just like Chicago or the East Coast where,
right.
Our season ends, we pack it up, we put it in the closet, and we take it back out in the spring, where we're crazy people out here in the Pacific Northwest. Like if you're a golfer out here, you've got 4 or 5, sets of rain gear. You're going to go out and play, any weather. As long as, the temperature doesn't drop below 40, we're all pretty good out here. Right. So, and with what we can do to the golf courses, it allows us to be able to play year round, which is just awesome.
Absolutely. And I think the one thing that helps that are most of the courses in the Northwest have pretty good greens. And so even if the course is a little sloppy and you get a little standing water in the fairway or there's some mud, like you've got a good green, you've got a good putting surface, it drains well. Especially on the coast, a lot of the greens are sand. I mean, a lot of them are push-up sand greens, like the ones in Bandon or, Gearhart and Astoria, and they drain really well. And the greens in the valley are always really good too. And they're always rolling at a consistent speed. They might be a little slower in the winter because we can't mow them as short, but they're always a really, really good putting surface year round. And, I think the biggest thing for people in affordable golf right now is like, just try to get your greens as good as possible. People don't really care about the fairways as much. Get the greens dialed in. Like that's where you should spend your money. And if your course has good greens, people are going to love it. They're going to want to play.
Flat tee boxes and good greens. That's all we ever preach on the podcast is if you're a low budget course and you're charging $18 to $25 to play 9 holes, or if you're an 18 hole course and you're charging $30 to $40 tee, like for a tee time, just make sure the greens and the tee boxes are good. We can work with everything else. Like I don't even care if the bunkers have sand in them. Like, we can figure that out. Like, it is exactly, it's a hazard. And then anytime anybody complains about a bunker not having sand in it, I'm like, well, go play a link style course, because you're not going to get much in there either.
Oh, you're gonna have seashells in there, and oh my God, some of those bunkers at St. Andrews are like, there's seashells, there's rocks. I mean, it's awesome, you know.
And if you're true into golf, then you should be able to adapt to any of those things. That's one thing I always laugh at when some of these guys that are, you know, country club only players or private club only players come out and play some of these rough around the edges public courses. They're bitching and moaning about bumps and mumps in the fairways and no sand in the bunker. And then you're just like, well, you still can't putt on these perfect greens. So I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, right. Like, those are the same guys that complain about the 14th hole at abandoned trails all the time. They're like, that hole's not fair. Like, yeah, it's not.
It's not, and it's not designed to be fair. There's supposed to be holes like that.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh man. Well, Matty, I've had you for about an hour and a half now. I appreciate you coming on. Anybody that comes to Oregon, please look up Matty. Hit him up on the Highlands Instagram or the Manzanita Instagram. He responds to everybody. I mean, don't hesitate to hit him up. I mean, you got to check out the courses if you're coming to Oregon or anywhere on the West Coast. Please make your way up to the Oregon coast and check our guy out, because he is doing wonders with these 2 9s out there, and it's a mecca of golf. If you haven't come out to the northern part of the Oregon coast, you got to check them out. So, well, thanks, Chris. You, Matty.
Appreciate the props, and it's always good to talk to you and be on the podcast, and can't wait for you to come back down. We'll play a little G.
Oh, absolutely. Very soon. And if you make it out to Portland, you're coming to see Akbar, please look me up. I'd love to get out and play with you guys.
Yeah, we'd love that. That'd be awesome.
Yeah. And I know you're in the club industry, but if you ever need anything, let me know.
Yeah. Well, we got to talk about some fitting stuff too, because we didn't even get into that part.
Yeah, if you wanna come out, you want to get a fitting, let me know. Free, it's all on me. I'll cover your fitting.
I want to pick your brain on a bunch of stuff, because you know, we do some fittings at Highlands quite a bit. So yeah, I'm really anxious to see what you got going on too. So it's been a pleasure to be on with you, man.
Absolutely, Matty. Let's catch up soon, and let's get some G in.
All right. See you, Chris.
All right, buddy.
Thanks.
Take care.
Bye. All right, bye.